be changing out the alternator on a 2005 Hyundai Tucson. Some of our warning signs were some lights coming on the dash. I think they kind of spell a code out, so we took it in to AutoZone, had them run a diagnostic, and it definitely looks like the alternator. So I went ahead and ordered one, but then like the day I ordered it, that night, we were driving the car along, and all of a sudden like things started going dim, like the clock, the dash lights, and then our headlights went out, and then the car pretty much died. Had to tow it home, so that pretty much spelled out that it was definitely the alternator. So here we are, we're going to change that sucker out. The first problem we ever saw, these two lights, the brake and the battery light, were coming on. So that was sort of our warning sign. I didn't know what that was, looked it up. Turns out it's more serious than a glitching panel. It's actually showing me that my alternator is probably bad. Later, these lights over here came on together while we were driving. It's the ABS brake and the ESP off. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is jack the car up so we can get that tire off. Front passenger side tire. We want the jack to go right here on this ridged part. I know it seems kind of weird because it's thin, but we just want the jack to come up on that. Have a jack stand ready so we can have the car set down on that. Alright, so our goal is to lift the car up high enough that we can get a little free play under the tire. But a good thing to do first, loosen your lug nuts before you get the car off the ground. Okay, and so like I said, while there's still weight on the tire, we're just going to use the tire iron that's in the back of the car, right where the spare tire is. Your Hyundai Tucson should have the jack that comes with it. It's by the spare tire in the back. And that one's going to give us enough to get this off the ground. Don't put your jack right there. There's like some bolts there that are going to make it won't sit flat. Okay, so I've got a couple of jack stands. I also put my floor jack under the front, just triple back up. Alright, so I'm about to remove the tire. Alright, my last thing is put a wheel chock behind one of your back tires, or both if you want. Okay, so once we've got the tire off, this is what you see in here. First thing we're going to have to remove is this plastic guard right there. The 10mm bolt there. Round up and around, there's 3 more. Real quick, I'm just going to go ahead and take off the negative terminal of the battery. That's a 10mm. Okay, so our next step is to release tension on the tensioner pulley so that we can get the belt off of the alternator. So there's the alternator right there. That's the alternator pulley. And there's the belt on it. And the bottom part of the belt goes right up to, that's the tensioner pulley right there. And we're just going to put the drive of our ratchet in that square right there. We're just going to crank down and pull just to loosen the tension. And once you get your ratchet in there, you're going to need to pull with your right arm and get the belt off the alternator with your left. So, alright, so now I've got the handle way up high so I have some leverage. It's not as hard as I thought it would be. Do that, and I should. Alright, so the pulley is now off. Okay, so here's a top view from inside the engine compartment. Okay, next is to unhook wires. There's 3 different things you're going to have to unhook. 2 of them are actually powered, I think, going in and out of the alternator. And one of them is just like a wire harness. We'll actually do that one first. We'll go up under. Right here, there's just a little clip that harnesses this wire right there. So mine's already undone, but you'll have to pull that clip out of yours. So here's my new alternator, which I ordered from rockauto.com, and just to show you what you're going to be working with. So this is where the wire harness thing plugs in. I don't even know how necessary that is because mine's been broken. But then there's a plug there, and then there's this. Well, this one will be screwed on with a boot over it. There's the plug right there. Well, I just don't have any hand left. So I finally decided that I need more room for my arm to get in here. And so I took out this bolt. I think that's the power steering line, fluid line. And that's just a bolt that sort of anchors it. So I pulled that out so I could push the power steering line out of my way so I can get my hand back in here because it's just barely enough room. Once I could get my right arm through here, and then left hand up through here, then I can kind of get both fingers on the plug and use my left hand, or my left index finger, to push the button on the back, and then my right hand just to jiggle it free. It's really hard. It's not easy. Well, that plug is out. There's that little lever. That's what you have to push in. I accidentally found the perfect place to hang your light. Half-inch socket, 13 millimeter fits too, but half-inch seems to fit a little tighter. So I'm actually having a really hard time getting my ratchet on that second wire nut back there, and so I think I might be able to, when I pull the alternator out, I might be able to reach it better. So I might try unbolting the alternator first and kind of sliding it out. We'll see. And so what I'm doing, two main bolts that hold the alternator in, and the lower one is right here. And I just got 9/16 socket, and I just put my ratchet on there, and it's really tight, so I really wanted to use my torque wrench that I have. Has a really long handle on it, so I can get lots of leverage. And so I'm just going straight down through. It's kind of a wishbone shape out to the CV joint and everything. I'm just going through there, and I was able to get enough torque to break that one loose. The top bolt to the alternator is right there. Of course, that one's a 12 millimeter. Fit down in there, so I'm gonna have to use a wrench. At least I have a ratcheting box and wrench. And we got it. That bolt's that long, and it goes there. Okay, we actually have it lifted out. Alright. I might actually first turn it in such a way that I can get that one wire out. Okay, so I'm still having a hard time getting to that one electrical nut on the back side of the alternator. So now I'm going to try to actually pull the alternator out. Again, like I'm finding this hole just to be too small to get it through. Things getting in the way is this bracket right here that, again, I think that's power steering line, and it's just a bracket that holds it into there. There's that 10 millimeter bolt right there, and if we pull that out, we can get this bracket out of our way. So we got that bracket off. One of the reasons I think this alternator went bad is there's just stuff all over it, which I think is actually power steering fluid. Pull that guy out. From the top of the engine now, with the alternator rotated around, I can see that nut right there. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the camera on it while I undo it, so this is the only way I was able to get the right kind of torque on it. And I don't know, like, if you're doing this exactly like me, you might not have rotated it the same way, so just however you can get a socket on that damn thing. Let's just wiggle this guy out of here. Axle off and stuff, because it's just a puzzle piece, 3D puzzle piece. There. Yes. Alright, so I don't know if you could see that, but I pointed the pulley out. I pointed the pulley out through this. There we go. If you can just point the pulley over the axle, then it comes out of the wheel well. And you can tell this alternator is just covered in grease, which I think may be dripping from the power steering fluid. I'll take a note of this. That wire post right there was a 12 millimeter on the old one, and it's a 1/2 inch on the new one. Alright, so we are ready to install our new alternator. Take this carriage bolt from your old one. Mine was pretty grimed up, so I just sprayed some degreaser on the bolts and the nuts. And you're just going to slide that one right through there. We'll go ahead and just lightly screw on that nut. I'm not going to tighten it down or anything, but we just want that to be ready to slide down in that little carriage arm inside there. So we're just going to try to reverse how we took out the other one with the plastic armature on the back side toward the inside of the engine, and just going like this way. So your pulley is facing you. Before we get it up in there, go ahead and take this nut off, because that's going to have to go over the top of the wire once we slide it down on there. And I'm going to try to position this first where I can really get to that wire, and I'm going to screw the wire down on. I'm going to try to tighten that nut real good before I situate the alternator in and tighten down the bolts that hold it in. Get with the puzzle. I think that's going to help me get that wire on that post. See, this is from top, that side of it, and that's where the wire comes down. I'm going to probably have to just blindly feel around to get it on the post. Right there. That guy needs to go on that post. Okay, I finally got the wire on the post. So right there, this is the boot. And then I just had to reach in with my left hand. And like, you can't see anything, you just have to feel it onto the post. You have to get it though, so it slides in the groove part here. But now I just need to get the nut on and tighten it down, and then it needs to slide all the way down so it makes contact. Okay, so I'm just gonna actually show you on the old alternator here. See how this plastic housing has grooves here and there on the sides. So basically we're trying to slide that wire on this post and get it to touch flat down on that metal right there. It needs to make a good contact, and then tighten this nut good and snug. The tricky part though is going to get that, have the wire go in that groove there, because I don't have the alternator set where it needs to go yet. Because then after I get that on, then I'm going to set it in where it needs to go and then tighten them. Okay, so what I did is I just I reached in and tightened, or just thumb screwed the nut on, just so that the wire can't come off the post while we move it around. Then I'm going to situate the alternator the way it's supposed to go, and then tighten it. Okay, here's another view from down through the wheel well. So see, I position the alternator so the pulley's facing out to me now, and what that did was that rotated the post there in such a way that the wire's in the correct place now. So now when I tighten the nut, tighten it right down to where it needs to be. I was able to get it, I think, sufficiently tight. From here it looks like it's making contact, so I'm happy with that. Now there's a boot that goes over it, and just need to make sure that covers it. Probably keeps out moisture. Okay, next step I'm just showing you on the old alternator is put this plug in. Remember, this part's facing toward the engine. The pulley is facing out toward where the tire would be. And so the clip part of this plug goes toward the engine. You might just have to feel around because it's all on the back. There's the right side of the alternator. Just needs to sit in that little U there. It's like a cradle for that bolt. I'm just going to lift it up and set it in there. Just reaching down blindly and try to reach in there and plug that. And it's not easy, but you gotta feel around until you get it. Okay, I finally got it. There's not much room for that plug down there, so you actually have to kind of palm the alternator, lift it up as far as it'll go as you're plugging. I'll show you on the old one. Okay, so here's actually how it's sitting in the car. And then so around there like that, that's where we're trying to plug it. And so actually, like, what I did was I just took my hand and sort of palmed it and then lifted it this way. At the same time, I held the plug with these fingers and pushed it in, because behind the plug there's not, if the alternator's sitting like that, there's not going to be enough room for the plug to lift, snap it in. And that also lines up this hole where that bolt's going to go. there. We're gonna line up those holes and stick that bolt in. Tighten it and that one. So reaching from behind the axle and everything, I reached up through and held with my left hand, and then screwed this bolt in with my right hand. Because you have to kind of hold the alternator up against that arm, that bracket right there, toward you, and then line up the hole, because you want to make real sure you don't strip out that bolt right there. And you should be able to thumb tighten it all the way in, or almost all the way in, because it's really highly machined threads in there, and that will help you know you're not cross-threading it. Okay, so I was only able to find torque specs for 06 and newer Tucsons. I'm just going to go ahead and assume it's the same for the 2005. So that right there is the pivot bolt, and it says 14 to 18 foot-pound. Get that set on our torque wrench. All right, and it's a 9/16. I haven't got the top or the bottom one quite tightened yet, but I'm gonna go up here and tighten the top one, just because the whole thing's a little loose and wobbly. Remember, this one's a 12 millimeter, and you have a really tight space right here to get in, and so if you have these box-in ratchet wrenches, man, they're so nice. I felt that one click. There we go. 14 to 16 on the lower one, and 11 to 16 foot-pounds on this top one. You know what, I don't even think I can get my torque wrench in there, because I have to have an adapter on my drives to get it down to fit. So I might just kind of tighten that one down and just hope it's close. The next step is to get the belt back on. Remember, we just popped the drive on our ratchet into this. Pull that down. It's not too hard. Just like that. Swing that down till you get enough slack, and then there we go. Let off. Okay, now we're just gonna put that bracket back on that goes right here. It's just like a mounting bracket where you can hook the power steering tube onto, and that's a 10 millimeter. So first we're gonna put the bolt down in the bottom. Next, we're gonna put this little plastic guard back on. Remember, it's 3, well, actually supposed to be 4. I only have bolts that go on there. They're all 10 millimeter. Alright, and I can't remember if I mentioned it in the video. I took off the engine cover just so I could get better access to the side over here. And that's just 4 bolts that are 10 millimeter, super easy. Just slide that back on, tighten those guys down. Good time to go ahead and put the battery post back on. And if you're like me, your car died because the alternator crapped out on you and you had to use up every last bit of juice in your battery to get back home somehow, in which case your battery is going to need to be jumped. Some people say charge it. How to do that, it's not going to crank right up. Alright, now let's just get our tire back on. Alright, just a reminder, when jumping cars, you want to park the cars next to each other, both off. First we're going to attach the positive jumper cable to the dead car, then positive to the live car, then the negative to the live car, negative post, and then the other end of the negative on the dead car, just attach it to the frame somewhere, an unparted part of the frame. And then we're going to start the live car and let it sit for 5 minutes, and then try to start the dead car. Moment of truth, the car started right up. I'm going to let it run for a while to really charge that battery up. Now disconnect your battery cables in the opposite order. Then you hear how loud that car is? That's our next DIY video.